Try that again. Good evening and welcome, everybody. Apologies. I think Peter Watley has given his apologies. Barbara Jones Williams is watching us remotely, I believe, to make sure we behave ourselves. I spoke with her earlier on today, and she sent her apologies, but she's not here for technical reasons rather than anything else. Douglas Godwin's given his apologies, and Tom has also. I hope he's not ill, Kathy. No, right, thank you. Any other apologies? I think we're all here apart from that, aren't we? Have we got any declarations, disclosable pecuniary interests or other disclosable interests? No. Right. Confirmation of the previous meeting, minutes of the previous meetings. Has anybody any comment on those? Right, if you approve them, then can you say aye?
Aye.
I think that's unanimous.
Yes.
Pick a proposer in a second. Right. The only announcements I've got is to introduce our officers, for those who aren't aware of who they are. On my immediate left is Simon Jones, our development manager for the North. Lee Walton is case officer for the application we're discussing tonight. Jenny Ager, who I'm happy to see back with us again tonight to keep us in order, our legal advisor. Bronwyn, who makes sure we're Democratic Services Officer, who makes sure we have all the information. And Kieran over the end, who's our boss, who's going to keep us definitely in order tonight. Right. And tell us how we should be doing it. Right. Update report. There was an update report. Has everybody read it? It was put out yesterday, so you have plenty of time. It's quite wordy. So I'm hoping everybody has had time. Yeah, good. So we're on to M//00954/OUT, and it's the application for Hope Lane, Clifton upon Team. Lee, you're on. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. If I can run through the slides. I'll get there eventually. This is the aerial photograph that shows the site's context and its relationship to the village. What it doesn't show is the more recent development that's taken place to the south of Hope Lane. Unfortunately, my mouse doesn't appear to be working. So that's the site. The land, the application site itself, the land falls away to the north and east, with the proposed built form within the higher land adjacent to the existing housing. We've got the location plan, the red outline, and the blue outline shows the wider extent of the ownership within the location. Then we've got illustration of the site from the SHLAR, so the call for sites as part of the local plan review. What we're looking at here is the green area, the application site itself, and comments that were previously given in the last committee report was referring to the wider site, which comes under the same reference number, so there's a bit of confusion. But to be clear, that from the point of view of considering the site, the planning officers, the planning policy officers' comments on on the application site area itself is circled in red, where they comment that the site was suitable as a reasonable alternative. That's a reasonable alternative to the preferred site, which has since been developed. So we move to slides that you've seen before. This is the illustrative proposal, broadly what one would expect to see come forward in terms of the disposition of the built form and the green space. And so we have very similar parameter plans that were provided. I'm running through all of the drawings that have been submitted and been considered previously. So we have the cross-section of the site. We have the point of access, which is to be approved if the outline is approved at this point. So there is includes an upgrade of the footway that connects with the village centre along Hope Lane. There's some comment that at certain points it narrows to between 1.5 metres and 1.8 metres, but I do need to bring to your attention the fact that Highways have considered the detail and they're quite happy with what's been brought forward. We have additional plans that I didn't show last time. They're just showing you the different highway aspects along Hope Lane that would be coming forward. Again, the Highways officers have considered this at the outset and haven't taken any issue with the details that have formed their recommendation. We move to the drainage layout. Again, it's the details would come forward as part of the conditions that would be attached to any permission. And we have here the swept path analysis, which again, I unfortunately, they weren't shown to you last time because we were dependent on the highway comments. So Highways officers had already considered this. One of those occasions where I can throw too much information at you rather than being sort of just, you know. Anyway, though this shows the car and tractor swept path analysis, and this one shows the refuge vehicle swept path analysis.
Could you go to the previous one, would you mind, please?
This one?
Previous slide again.
The car and tractor?
Yes. The size of the tractor, please. Does it show the size of what tractor was?
Well, what we're basically looking at, I think, at this point is a refuge vehicle, so they would be probably comparable in the larger size.
There's a separate slide for that, but the dimensions are there for that.
Yeah. Okay. So we have some dimensions there, as you've drawn my attention to them. So you've got 10.2 metres in length, and the width 2.5 metres. So that would be one of the larger vehicles that would be using the site. That's the most important calculation. And so just the photographs that show the site, the existing field access that members that went on the site visit last time would be aware of. And then a scene looking from the south western corner of the site, looking back towards the existing housing. And so, I suppose, in terms of various comments that may have been made last time and that the current report picks up on, in terms of the footpath link via Hope Lane that provides for the point of access that supports the application that's before us. In terms of the additional permeability of the site that could be brought forward in terms of the site's northeastern corner that was commented on last time. The point being that that's not part of the proposal that is before us, and it's not relied upon by the application in terms of supporting the application at this point. The overwhelming issue here is the council's lack of housing land supply, I'm afraid, and specifically the engagement with paragraph 11D of the National Planning Policy Framework. and the tilted balance. And what we're really looking at this point is any adverse impacts must significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits of the proposal. In this case, the consultee responses have been received. None of them amount to objections or refusals, I'm afraid. Whilst the benefits of the additional housing in what is a Category 1 rural settlement, given that the council has a 2.06 housing supply, means that the proposal would attract very substantial weight in favour of its development at this point. So the recommendation, therefore, Chairman, would be to approve. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. I understand we've got Parish Council representative, Councillor John Bowden. Thank you. Yeah, you know the rules. 3 minutes.
Yes, I hope I've... Is that on? Yes, I had trouble with that on Monday. I'm not very good with microphones. Good evening and thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. The village appreciates that you wish to hear our views. This documents the neighbourhood plan, which was produced by volunteers from the village and approved by Malvern Hills in 2017. It's been periodically revised since then and is valid till 2030. This and the current Southwest Development Plan are the only approved documents. Strangely, neither the planning authority nor Terrace Strategic mentioned it. This current SWDP does not include these, and the new one is yet to be adopted. Both Malvern Hills and Terrace Strategic documents state that there is a shortfall in the number of houses to be built within the village, but this is not the case. An MP shows 4 sites giving a total of 115 new houses, of which 91 have been built. In addition to these, 6 have been built as an infill in Pound Lane, despite the NP only allowing 5 as an infill, and there is 1 further property on the main road. There are 11 properties for sale within the village, including 3 on the Hope Lane site. These are the show house and the 2 shared ownership properties, which suggest a 40% social housing will not sell and is therefore unrealistic. The planning authority focus should be on the Winnington estate to get them to build the 17 houses at Church House Farm, which were approved back in 2015. On the existing Hope Line site, south of this proposed site, the SWDP now lists 33 houses, not 55. This is also strange, as Jeff Greffs, the current developer of the site, had been told by planning not to apply for these extra 10 until the new SWDP was in place. This seems very strange. 55 houses would be the largest estate in the village, bigger than any approved or built to date. The traffic survey for Hope Lane was carried out between 11 AM and 12 PM, the quietest time of the day. Our survey between 8 and 9 o'clock showed an average of 75 vehicles passing the junction with the village at this same time, at the same time as the Chantry School bus is collecting children and primary and nursery school children are arriving at school. The impact of possibly a further 110 vehicles passing at a similar time would create a major safety issue. It's difficult to see why Worcester Highways have changed their recommendation, given no further information has been provided. There's little employment within the village, so new residents would have to drive to their work location. Across Ham Bridge, a Grade 2 listed structure, which is deemed by Worcester Highways to be already at capacity, with no further works planned to upgrade the bridge.
Can you bring your remarks to conclusion?
1 sentence left. Another major safety issue. I urge the district councillors to take the correct decision and not be swayed by any financial consideration. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. We've got an objector, Pippa Bolsh.
Mr. Chairman, councillors, we must strongly object to the officer's recommendation for approval. The applicant's own survey confirms the protected dormice bats on site, with likely presence of great crested newts. Under the Habitats Regulations 2017 and Wildlife Countryside Act 1981, it is illegal to disturb or destroy the habitats. Yet the officer claims biodiversity net gain can follow development. This completely inverts NPPF paragraph 180 and SWDP policy 22, which require refusal where harm to biodiversity cannot be ruled out. You cannot destroy habitat and then promise a gain later. Policy demands precaution, not speculation. The landscape harm is also downplayed. The officer focuses on limited visibility, but visibility isn't the only issue. This is an ecologically sensitive area, part of a wildlife corridor. The real impact is on the species, not just what we can see from the road. Let's be clear, biodiversity isn't a detail for later, it's central to the legality of this proposal. Proceeding would expose the council to legal challenge. The officer also dismisses the loss of this sloping, south-facing, food-producing, Grade 2 agricultural land, which is clearly best and most versatile under NPPF paragraph 174. Grade 2 is premium farmland. DEFRA warns against development on BMV land unless absolutely necessary. That test is not met here. There's no need for more housing. 15% of recent homes remain unsold and 20 already approved homes next to this site haven't even started. This is land banking, not sustainable development. The VFRTS wrongly scored Clifton as having a doctor's surgery. It closed years ago. This inflates the village sustainability and undermines the scoring used to justify this application. Meanwhile, the local school is full, with 67 children potentially displaced due to pressure from wider development and the ensuing problems that they will suffer. The officer glosses over this with no real analysis. This is not just irresponsible, it's damaging to families. Councillors, this application breaches national policy, ignores ecological law and fails the test of sustainable development. Please, for our wildlife, land and community and everything else, refuse this application. Finally, the Council is expected to follow government guidance and to consider the policies of the new SWDP at an advanced stage now when considering this application. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The applicant is represented by Richard Pitt. Thank you.
Thank you. Committee, thank you once again for the opportunity to speak in support of your officer's recommendation. In response to the previous meeting, we have made a written submission which directly addresses those reasons for deferral and additionally discusses those matters raised by members during the debate. The general content of that submission is also summarised by your officers at the beginning of the report, which is before you this evening. To summarise the conclusions of your officer's report, this is a proposal where there are no overriding technical concerns which could not be resolved via the implementation of planning conditions or through the determination of reserved matters. This includes issues relating to highways, education capacity, drainage, ecology and landscape. The development accords with virtually all policies in the development plan, and when there is conflict, that conflict is limited, with little to no actual planning harm. We draw members' attention to a recently determined appeal for 90 homes in the village of Great Whitley. That decision is a material consideration in determining the scheme before you this evening. Clearly 90 homes are greater than the 55 before you today. However, the inspector found Great Whitley to be one of the most well-serviced villages in South Worcestershire. In comparison, Great Whitley and Clifton upon Team are both recognised as Category 1 settlements, identified as being within the top 10 most sustainable rural settlements as defined by the Village Facilities and Rural Transport Study. Furthermore, the inspector was also satisfied that, in such locations, there was a suitable level of sustainable transport solutions and that the additional homes would likely add to the vitality of the village. In conclusion, the scale of development was considered appropriate for that location and the availability of infrastructure. Given the similarities between the two proposals and the two settlements, we request that the same judgment is reached in relation to this application. Weighed alongside this is the severe shortfall in housing land supply, which is currently identified at just over 2 years. To again reference the planning inspector for the recent decision in Great Whitley, the SWDP's development strategy is falling well short in its aim to meet housing need, and is also failing to support the government's objective of significantly boosting the supply of homes. As a consequence, the adopted policies of the local plan are out of date and the presumption in favour of sustainable development must be applied. In these circumstances, the NPPF tells us that applications should be approved where the benefits of the proposal are not significantly and demonstrably outweighed by the harms. Case law makes it clear that this test is a high bar, particularly when very substantial weight is placed upon the benefits of the proposal, as is done correctly here by your officers. Your officers continue to be satisfied that this is a scheme which should be granted. Equally, we can see no material planning reason why the officers' recommendation should not be supported. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Right. Councillor Paul Cummings.
There is one area that has been under dispute, and that is whether this land was in the SLA and rejected. I appreciate that the reason why it wasn't put in was because it was part of a larger site, but there's been a site to replace it. So if you put the replacement site and this one in, you achieve exactly what they didn't want to have last time. So I think the SLA is relevant on that. It is an area in open countryside, as the officer said, higher than lots of areas around it. And it's a typical rolling countryside of that part of the world. Clifton was calculated as having a 41 house oversupply when the SWDPR was put together. There would be 96 with 55 houses here. So Clifton has got more, or is getting more than its fair share already without adding this to it. There is one issue that's been raised with me today, and that is the access that a farmer will need of his tractor and his trailer, having to go through a residential area. That does strike me as being somewhat risky, because it's being confirmed that nothing will be done about that by the developer. So we have that problem hanging over us. There are three areas which I think are very relevant, but the experts, county mainly, don't. Transport. Where are people going to work who live here? It's going to be some in Worcester and some in the West Midlands. Either way, they've got to cross the river. The road at Stourport and Holt, which people going to the West Midlands would need to cross, are already pretty blocked. And the conclusion that this should go ahead because it's not our problem. It's amazing how you could say that when they haven't actually done a survey. I would have thought they would have done the survey and then concluded that, not done in advance. There is the question then of the school. As a governor, not so long ago, I seem to recall that there wasn't much space to build any further and expand further. But that seems to be taken out in the report, and we've got to, or the school's got to, remove some people from the school in order to make space for the other ones who need to go. I'm glad I haven't got a child at that school where people are being removed. And finally, the issue of water. There are problems with water in the village, but as with all these things, the relevant body undertakes to sort it out, and we just have to see whether it actually happened. The key issue, or one of the key issues, is obviously the land supply, and we have to build the tilted balance into play. I will put forward a motion concerning that later on, once I've heard the comments of other members, if the chairman will let me.
Yes, please. As the second ward councillor for Clifton upon Team, I agree with everything that Councillor Paul Cumming has said, but I would like to add one or two little bits of my own. We have said, or someone said in the report, that the benefits of additional housing will be substantial in presumably the whole of the Malvern Hills district area. We've had the developer talk about the appeal at Great Whitley, but Great Whitley is already on a road that goes from Great Whitley into Dunley into Starport. So people who live along there are already used to noise and lots of traffic. This is an incursion into the beautiful Worcestershire countryside. And once it's gone, it's gone. The people that live there, it will be a 10-mile ride into Worcester, a 10-mile ride into Tenbury Wells, and a 10-mile ride into Bromyard. In my head, that does not strike me as being particularly sustainable in the long term. As Paul's already said, people won't find employment in this area. It's a rural area, and as I've said already, it's 10 miles to get anywhere to the supermarket. Very limited public transport. I think there might be one bus a day into Tenbury Wells, and you have to come back pretty soon as you've got there. I know we have to look at the tilted balance, but we are going to encourage people to come and live in the developments in Clifton upon Team. Sorry. We're going to encourage people to come and live out here that have really got no connection with the village rural way of life, few of them. So there's absolutely no point in me carrying on. We've got the tilted balance, appreciate that, but I do think it needs to be looked at in this particular village in a lot more detail. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. Councillor Walton.
Sorry, Chair, I'm going to be like a stuck record at probably every planning committee from now on till ever. I think we talk about sustainable villages, and obviously I represent Lower Broadheath, and that's within the catchment area of the Chantry, as is Clifton as well. But I'm getting increasingly concerned about the number of children that are expected to go to the Chantry, because as a governor there, it's already full, and we've got 2,500 houses being built over at Lower Broadheath, and we've obviously got these houses being proposed here on top of what we've already seen at Great Whitley and at Martley as well in particular. So in terms of the sustainability of it, I think from an educational point of view, I think it's difficult to prove that. But I am concerned about the fact that whenever we see the report come back from county, it always seems to just be okay in terms of education, but doesn't actually say literally where children are going to go to. And I think that is a worry for me. And I know in this case, it's a difficult one to argue against because county haven't really come back with an argument against that. But I think going forward, we need to continue to push this point and make sure that we're not building houses for people to move into where children then don't have school places, because literally as it stands, there are no places of secondary education, unless I guess they can go over to Tenbury, but then even that's going to be shorter and shorter, isn't it, in terms of developments that we've got being built. So I think that's a major issue. And I think also just to Pam's point about the categorisation of villages, or I think it was the parish councillors' categorisation of villages, they do seem to be very out of date as well in terms of what some of the villages do and don't offer. And Clifton's I know Clifton well. It's a lovely little village, but it's difficult to argue it being category 1 in terms of what it offers, I would say. They're just my points.
Thank you, Daniel. Anybody else wish to speak? David?
Yes. First of all, thanks to the officers for the work that they've done on this, because we've had extra sheets come forward and what have you, which is very interesting. I'd like you, if you can, please, Lee, being as you're controller of the beloved iPads or what have you, and go forward a few slides. I'll come back to one again in a minute, but that'll do for a minute. That has the access there into the site at 5.5 metres width. Now, if you go to the, I think it's the next slide that gives you the dimensions of the, carry on, sorry, the tractor. That one. Which is interesting because it gives you a width of 2.35 metres. And it gives you the width of a car as well there, which isn't that wide. But I am concerned about this, partly because I know we've got a tractor swept path analysis, but how often do you see a tractor go to a field without an implement on the back? Even if you take a trailer to fetch some hay off, I don't know what the field at the back is used for. The ward members might know what it's normally cultivated on there and what have you, but you have to sort of fetch the crop off it. And if any cars decide they're going to park in this particular road, and there's nothing to stop them, as I've already found out to my own deficit by having cars parked immediately opposite my drive. So I can't get out without going on the pavement. So having that would be normally a reason on its own, I would think, that this should be refused. You also said very early on that the highways are quite happy with the, I think you said 1.5 metre wide footpath? Up to? Up to 1.8. From what?
There's a pinch.
As opposed to 2 metres.
Yes, but what's
So
the
it's a
minimum
compromise.
that's there?
It's 1.5, was it? Yeah. At the lowest point, yeah.
Yes.
So they're not able to achieve the 2 metres all the way along, but the point of concern from deferral from the last meeting, I think, was whether the footways would incur into the road space in being widened rather than onto the verge. That was the point of clarification. Obviously, any site is constrained. What's being achieved as an enhancement in terms of footway width? And there are some points where they can't achieve 2 metres.
There'll be some points they won't even achieve 1 metre. I'm just looking around and quite a few people seem to be nodding, so obviously they've all had their tape measures out. I am very concerned with this, but most of all I'm concerned about the South Worcester Development Plan and the Development Plan Review. And in particular, in the review, Regulation 19, I think it is. Yep, Regulation 19. On page 278, it does show the site at Hopes Lane that's on the other side of the road for 55 houses. And interestingly, this site was not put up or not approved to go forward in the South Worcester Development Plan Review. Now, you did show something, a slide that did say that it was acceptable. They had said it was acceptable, but that didn't say whether it was acceptable when there was already 55 houses going forward, of which I believe 30 odd have been built. Lee is very kindly there at the bottom of that one, Lee. Where it says CFS 0042 is preferred as an alternative, is it? Or allocation? As an allocation. So we've got the site that's got part planning permission. and part of them have been built. And as was said by Councillor Paul Cummins, this is going to finish up with a lot more. Now, this site was not approved to go forward to the inspector for housing. Might have been there, might have been in the documents, but as far as I'm aware, it wasn't brought up by the inspector, and I've attended all but 2 of the meetings so far, 2 of which I had to do online, but I've been there quite a few times, as no doubt Kieran will know, and Simon and Lee, seen them all there, and what have you. And I'm just very worried that this is going to be an overdevelopment. I know it'll still be within the sort of guidelines, but as has been said, you've got traffic to contend with, you've got employment, and there's nothing being proposed with all of those houses. And if you go back to your map that you had, which was in yellow and red and green, that one, you know, what's the red for? Are the red are sites that have been ruled out?
Yes, would be the answer to
So
that.
all the red ones have been ruled out. So if we carry on like this sort of thing, we're going to finish up, to be honest, with Clifton upon Team being the minority of the properties within this village. And I'm afraid I'm not that impressed. It was also mentioned about habitats by one of the speakers. Was very eloquent, that. A lot of it I hadn't read in the documentation. I'm not saying that it wasn't there. But obviously the lady concerned was saying that a lot of it wasn't there. There's always going to be habitats. There's always going to be birds. There's always going to be, you know, muntjac deer. There's going to be all sorts of things, you know, which I quite agree with. But I just think this is overdevelopment of this village. I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. Councillor Michael, did I see your hand up?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Can you hear me? My usual whinge about these villages are getting overdeveloped. It's happening everywhere. Instead of organic growth, we're turning these villages into dormitory villages. They're not sustainable. The people are going to travel to work miles away. They're going to have to shop miles away. And it's destroying the rural aspects of the country. And I note about what Councillor Harrison mentioned about the tractors. We have tractors in our village on narrow lanes, big ones as well, and they're already destroying the verges and the hedge lines because of the size of them. They're massive these days. I know we're hamstrung by the 5-year housing land supply and the NPPF, but there has to be draw a line sometime about how much you can develop these even category 1 villages, because the infrastructure doesn't exist and you're just overdeveloping these sites. Thank you.
Anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Bruton.
Just a quick question. Employment, is that a material consideration?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the categories of villages, so I think there's quite a few points to pick up. So I don't know if the chair's happy for me to do that now, because
if you would. So
starting at the SLA, which has been mentioned in terms of site selection for the development plan, that I'm a bit concerned about the discussions around that, because actually what that is it's a consideration of sites put forward at the plan stage to meet the need that's identified at that point in time for a village and a settlement, which then contributes to the meeting the overall housing supply need. But it's not assessing whether a site would in the future potentially get planning permission or not. That's for a matter to consider on its merits if it came forward. It's purely as a tool to allocate the best sites, and in this case this wasn't considered the best site as we know, and wasn't taken forward as part of the emerging development plan, but it was deemed to have some merit in terms of its, as you've seen the assessment, in terms of its location, etc. so that's one point. In terms of the categories of villages, that does look at employment opportunities and also what facilities are in and around the village as well or nearby. That's, again, some of the comments from committee members is rather concerning because the current development plan is based on settlement hierarchy, Clifton being category 1. The emerging development plan, which we've all discussed, debated and it's been voted upon, also considered the Clifton to be a category 1 village. So sort of discussions here when we're at public examination on a development plan a week ago, arguing that our plan is sound based on the strategy that these members and other members of other councils have voted and democratically put forward, to then hear comments to suggest that actually these categories of villages are unsustainable and can't support any growth is obviously contrary to that and doesn't really follow what we're doing and what plan we're trying to deliver. So that is taken into account. Of course, we can only take into account the settlements that we have in the districts. So you know, some places these categories of villages may, if they were categorising villages in other places that had bigger settlements, more facilities, they may fall in lower categories. But we in Malvern and South Worcestershire are dealing with the settlements that we have. We've also heard about the highway points. I think there's a lot of valid points around that. I think that has been looked at in detail by Highways. We've had the comments back. We can dispute whether that's agreed or not, but it is a fact that the Highway Authority, who are the technical experts, haven't raised concerns from that perspective. And that's clearly a material consideration in terms of what they've said. There are some compromises as we've heard in terms of footway widths, and that's a matter of judgment. The test in terms of refusing something on highway grounds, it has to be a severe highway impact or a highway safety impact, and Highways don't feel that it meets that test to warrant refusal, so they wouldn't support a refusal. Again, the habitat points, it has been considered in the report. Our ecologist has looked at this and there's supporting documentation as well and has deemed it appropriate. It's been through the derogation test, which is required if there's any impact on protected species, and that's also detailed in the report. And ultimately, there isn't an objection. There's an ability to mitigate and enhance its biodiversity on the site. The school point is also an extremely important point. I think, again, we are in a difficult position because we have got the Educational Authority suggesting that they can accommodate that either through expansion, but requesting contributions. And what we're not party to all the way in which that's calculated, because there is forecasting in terms of future generations. I mean, the Educational Authority can map what children are coming through in the area and so they should be able to forecast. It is harder with speculative development because obviously development that's included within the plan, they know in advance and they can actually forecast much easier and try and make sure provision is made. But ultimately they are those responsible for, and they've got a statutory duty to provide educational places and school places. So again, that's a difficult area, I think, as Councillor Walton's sort of mentioned, although understandably a concern. And I know the applicant has referred to the Great Whitley appeal decision, but there are quite a few parallels within that in relation to 5-year supply landscape, and it's not necessarily suggesting that the sites are the same, but the messages from planning inspectors are quite clear at the minute about how things are being considered locally and nationally in terms of the level which they're applying or level of weight they're attributing to 5-year housing land supply. So I think just for members to be really aware, to be honest, that it's a very high bar to resist development unless there's really significant harms demonstrated, and they do need to be evidence-based. The Great Whitley appeal touched on various things, including the loss of best and most versatile land, where the site was fully best and most versatile land, impact on landscape as well, and and essentially said the 5-year housing land supply meant that noting those levels of harm was still considered to be acceptable. The other parallel was, and that weighed in favour, it was outside but adjacent to a Category 1 village. So again, they found it to be a sustainable and well-served location. So I just think it's really important that members are fully aware of that picture, because, you know, it's a very difficult bar, like I say, to demonstrate a compelling appeal case potentially. So I hope that helps sort of cover quite a few bits, but I thought it was probably useful because they're sort of all interlinked in different ways. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Wilmot.
Thank you, Chair. If I can go back, Kieran, to your first point on this being a Category 1 village, and under the tilted balance, we almost must allow that because the development boundary is dissolved. Your inference, if not statement, was that because this is a Category 1 village, you could almost have unlimited development. Where do we draw the line?
I mean, there ultimately will be a point. So, I mean, I think there's a point in time, I suppose, where you have to assess the village character and appearance, and other things as well. I mean, you have to do that anyway, and the wider landscape harms. But I think the trying to put a percentage on it's very difficult. There's lots of appeals have allowed 50% increases in settlements sizes. There's lots of appeal decisions that says there's no specific cap, and there isn't a cap in terms of growth in numbers in terms of the NPPF. So there is a drive to deliver housing. So we do have to consider each case on its own merits, and if there's compelling reasons. So if there was, and members may consider there to be a significant landscape impact, and look at it cumulatively with other developments that have been delivered already. So that there is often a point where that gets to. I think at this point, we're, you know, the advice and that our landscape officers and experts have not raised those issues as a point of which we think would have a strong grounds for refusal. So it's, you know, there isn't a definitive answer on that, unfortunately, like many planning points, and it would be a lot easier if there was in some respects. But yeah, I mean, the growth in a number of settlements across South Worcestershire really have been quite significant, and including those allowed at appeal. So we have to look at the facts for each one, and I think the view here is cumulatively there is an impact, there's a visual impact, but actually the development could be accommodated from officers, should I say? That's the view. Thank you.
Councillor Cummings.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Wilmot raises an interesting question just now, and I certainly have thought back to when we were originally doing the SWDP, when one of the decisions we made was that we would not put all the development in the villages, but it would be spread around. And the categories were obviously based on that. So I know it's our policy is to put on there at the moment, but I'm not sure it's as justified as it was originally as to which category they're in, although I do appreciate that they are in the category. It makes a difference. The other point that was mentioned was the highways again. I've been trying for some years to get the County Council to do a study on the highways. They didn't do it around here. Well, here being round Clifton, and all the way to the river. The answer to that is that they're not there to solve historical issues. Well, I think the building of several thousand houses north of Worcester could be considered an additional area, not just an historic situation. I'd like to refer to Great Whitley, because that's been referred to quite a lot tonight. We're always told we have to judge each situation on its own merits. Great Whitley had a big difference to this one. Half the site they wanted to build on was already in the plan. So it wasn't just the whole lot affecting the countryside, it was that part. And I quote the inspector, and I believe these same comments apply to the site at Clifton. There's an intrinsic character and beauty of the countryside. There's a verdant open view, and what I think is probably most important, the level of harm is both major and permanent. There's one other factor which I think we need to consider, and that is the advancement of the local plan. When the Great Whitley appeal took place, it hadn't gone to the examination by the inspectors. At this stage, it has. It is unlikely, looking at the current timetable, that any appeal will go in before the next stage of the plan, which is when the inspectors come back to us and say, in principle, they approve of the plan, but there may be some detail. I find it amazing to consider that at that stage the SWDPR doesn't gain extra weight when you look at the tilted balance. As a result of all those considerations and the comments made by members, I propose that we refuse this application contrary to officer's recommendation. And the grounds, which I believe are highly relevant in view of the fact this is out in the countryside and this is a beautiful area, is SWDP Part 2. Officers will come if I've got the wrong number on that one. 21, which is design, and 25, landscape character. The inspector did in fact help me on those with his some comments at Great Whitley. It also contravenes the neighbourhood plan, number CH2, and has an adverse effect on the right-of-way CT562, which will be in full view once you came off the site on the footpath into Hope Lane. If you're going for a walk, you really don't want to see masses of houses built there. So I move that it would be refused against officer recommendation.
Councillor Panwat Cummings.
I'm happy to second that recommendation.
Thank you. Can I ask officers if that is given us sufficient reason to vote on?
I think the we probably need a little bit more around. I think the policies are sound. I think and the impact on the public right of way. I think some of the policies you sort of mentioned the design. So just to obviously that could mean a number of things. So just to be clear, I presume, and I don't want to put words in your mouth. So correct me if I'm wrong. But you're talking about settlement character and pattern and sort of that kind of thing, rather than the design or make. So yeah, just need a bit of clarity around that.
Yeah, there are particular parts of each of those sections that are more relevant than others. So I agree with you.
So
I think we'll need you to spell that out slightly more before we vote on it, Paul.
Well, the first one, which I'm not sure I got the number, but Part 2C. It might be SWDP 2.
I think that's the outside development.
Oh, that's it. Yes, that's the one.
So
it is outside the settlement boundary.
In open
development boundary.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important part, particularly Part C of 2. 16, and they need. I'm in the wrong section.
You are. What
Yeah, Part C of SWDP 2, particularly.
You said that about the open countryside.
The design one, 21.
This is when I wish I had a paper copy because it's much easier, I think.
So do we all.
We're not allowed them anymore.
Development proposals must complement the character of the area. Roman numeral 2. In particular, development should respond to surrounding building with the distinctive features or qualities that contribute to the visual and heritage engines of the townscape, frontages, street and landscape quality of the local area. That in particular is the point in that one. There may be others because I wasn't expecting the detail, but that's the first one.
I think that...
And one as well, actually. The siting and layout of a development should reflect the given characteristics of the site in terms of its appearance and function. I think both those 1 and 2 are highly relevant to this.
Brilliant.
And 25...
That's the landscape one.
Landscape,
so,
yeah.
So it's just ensuring that we're picking up on the sort of landscape, the important landscape features that have been identified. So I know you mentioned the public right of way and views from that when you were in your discussion earlier.
Yes, it goes. All the comments on that one, I think, affect this one. All the points.
I think what I'd suggest, if you're happy and if the chair's happy, that the motion would be to delegate the final word into the Director of Planning and Infrastructure to finalise the wording, and that could be done in consultation with yourself.
Yes, please.
If you're happy for that motion, we'd obviously then bring that together. I think we've got a good, obviously for the public record, we've got a good framework to work around, and then we would obviously bring it back to yourself and then be issuing the decision. And the other one that would need adding is a technical reason for refusal in relation to section 106, because we because there wouldn't be one signed, it's a technical matter, but it needs to be it would need to be included to make sure that could be appropriately dealt with should an appeal come about.
I think yes, without over specific wording, we're all quite clear where Paul's motion is derived from. So I think we'll go to the vote. Are we ready?
I think so.
If I could help, we have had another document which downgraded it. I don't know the circumstances under which we were prepared, but there is something. And I'm concerned about producing that, not because I disagree with it. I look at what was said at Great Whitley about the farmland there. The inspector was not impressed with that argument. So I don't want to get away from the key points we do have and the strong points that we do have.
Thank you. Are you happy with where we are? Thank you.
Thank you, members. All of those in favour to refuse the application contrary to officer recommendation, please raise your voting cards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All those against the motion? 3. No abstentions. Any abstentions? No. The motion to refuse is therefore carried. Thank you, Chair.
That's it. Thank you. Daniel, you can go to the theatre now.